In this edition of the Maximize Your Medicare Weekly, we've got only 80 days to the presidential election, and I talk about Joe Biden's proposal to lower the Medicare eligibility age from 65 to 60, and we've got a new edition of See Me After Class. Let's go. Week's Maximize Your Medicare Weekly. What we're going to start out with is again the reminder. I'm going to be a broken record here, but let's start here anyway, right? Which is that the seats for Medicare ABCs are filling quickly. It's on October 5th. The link is in the video. All right. I'm not really sure which is the corner. Anyway, the fact of the matter is that pre-registration is required. I'm going to go through all the parts of Medicare. A, B, C, D, Medigap. Okay, I'm going to talk about the key features and what's going to be important about the video, the presentation on October 5th is, I'm not going to concentrate on the flyers and all the stuff that you can, easily click. I've got a book, 200 pages worth about the nuts and bolts, but really what I'm going to be focused in on the things that can be easily overlooked. And what ends up happening is people misunderstand Medicare right from the get-go. So as a result, you try to add on or consider the ripple effects. Well, if you have the faulty understanding to begin, it's very difficult. It gets even more confusing when you kind of consider whether or not Medigap is proper, whether Medicare Advantage is better, whether or not your employer-provided, retirement plan is better. It's just very difficult to begin when you have a faulty starting point. Anyway, that stuff is coming up on October 5th. I cannot have zero control over, once I hit the capacity, that's it. All these video conferencing software, et cetera, Zoom. I'm not going to be using Zoom. These kinds of things are restrained by, the technology. I have no flexibility beyond that. I am going to tell you that I'm not going to be end up recording and posting to the YouTube channel. I'm not going to be doing that. There are reasons for that which is that I can't have people mishandling the information. That's your main reason. Anyway, there you go. October 5th. Please be sure to register. Please do not delay. Okay. Main point here is we're 80 days out. So November, whether or not we're going to mail in voting, and I'm not going to get into the politics of all of that. What I'm going to focus here is this thing: big deal, little deal, no deal. There's one part which I think is a big deal, and it's right here on your screen, right? Joe Biden is proposing, amongst a number of different complicated healthcare proposals to try to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, is proposing lowering the Medicare eligibility age from 65 to 60. And for people here, there are a number of takeaways. First of all, number one, current Medicare beneficiaries you might be concerned here, right? Because 65 to 60, at 10,000 people a day turn 65. So if you expand this to the number of different people that could possibly become instantly Medicare eligible if they turn to 60, that's 5 years worth of people at 10,000 people a day. So if you do your math, 5 times 365, that's what, 18 million people. Somewhere in that range. Yes, there are not going to be as many because or it could be more because some of those people were from disability, et cetera. Maybe there's going to be declining birth rate. I haven't done the math. I'm just doing a finger in the air exercise. Right now, there are about 62 million, 63, 62 million. At 18, that makes 80 million people on Medicare instantly from 62. The question is, where is the money coming from, right? Because remember, payroll tax has been held during the lifetime. That sits in the Medicare Trust Fund. That to pay for Part A. So whether or not they're going to be taking away from existing Part A, or whether or not there's going to be existing funds in order to be top up the Medicare Trust Fund, that I've not gone into that, but that is an open question. Whether or not that forces then, Part A to be weaker by benefits, I can't answer that to you today. Nevertheless, it's a big deal. For the persons who are 60 to 65, this ultimately is a huge possible pay increase, one way or the other. You're retired and you're 62 and you've been buying individual health insurance and you didn't get the Affordable Care Act tax subsidy. Well, now your premium is $800, $1,500. It now goes to what? Is it going to go down to Medicare eligible if you're to the current 65 area? $144.60 plus Medigap at $125, let's call it. Part D, $35, or under Medicare Advantage, $0. You can see it. This is a possible huge increase to pay, ultimately, or huge improvement to benefits, which is kind of the same thing, right? So you can understand why I wrote Maximize Your Medicare, because people who turn from 64 to 65, all of a sudden, their lives have improved notably, instantly, on the first day of the month they turn 65. The third is a little bit more subtle, but it really has to do with the overall message of Maximize Your Medicare, the newsletter, all the videos here on the channel, which is why you need to end up watching all the videos and see what the entire message is, right? Which is that these things have ripple effects to each other. What does that mean? That means that, number one, I've been encouraging planning 2 years prior to Medicare eligibility. Guess what? That means that now becomes 58. And by 58, what I mean is it's the time 58 for the first person in your household. So if you're a married person, the earlier of the two of you turning 58. Why 58? It's because in order to determine IRMA, which can result in higher Part B and Part D premiums, their IRS is looking at the tax return from 2 years prior. So instead of 60, 58. So right now, I tell persons, if you're Medicare eligible when you're 65, you want to start thinking about this when you're 63, not 64.9. Okay. So now we've just jumped that entire process down to a much younger age, from what was 63 now down to 58. In other words, Medicare planning much, much earlier. Those are my 3 takeaways. That's the 5,000-foot view. There are a ton of different other ripple effects here. We've not even talked about the other planks of the Biden healthcare proposal. Stay tuned here. I'll be addressing that as it comes. Before I get on to See Me After Class, I just want to point out that the website for the book, MaximizeYourMedicare.com, be sure to go to it because I've enhanced the website itself notably. So in addition to, we've got the latest, in other words, selected blog posts. The problem here with the newsletter, the weekly, there's so many topics. It's hard to keep them kind of all, under one umbrella. And the fact of the matter is the tags and even the newsletter, there's not a really good way to index all the different topics. Well, I've put it under the latest, and on the right-hand side of your screen, you will see Tag Cloud, so that you can take a look at the website and look at your favorite topic and click on it. The second thing here is we've got a brand new page that I called Enrollment Central. It's not only for Medicare, but it's also for the Affordable Care Act. In addition to that, you can ask me questions about short-term plans if that applies to your family. Now, the reason this is important is that, for example, married couple, one person turns Medicare eligible, the other one is not. okay, the service that I provide to households is really about the household as a collective whole, not just Medicare by itself for that one person. That is an incomplete answer. I'm not interested in incomplete, suboptimal household answers. I'm interested in optimal household solutions. That may mean two spouses, not just one. Okay. And for that reason, that's why I've also included the Affordable Care Act. Because what people think is that, and this has to do with the segregation, and many of the people who are watching the video, you already know what my story is here. You already know what my message is, right? You need to think about all the different ripple effects, Roth IRA conversion, RMD. In addition to that, even within health insurance, what ends up happening is saying somebody says, okay, well, I'm going to handle Medicare separately. I'm going to handle my pre-Medicare eligible spouse separately. Maybe that's short-sighted. And I'm not saying that the end conclusion is going to be handle them all together. Maybe you do have to handle them separately. But I need to hear what your priorities as a household are. Why? One spouse could be in a notably different health situation than the other. That may mean that you prioritize the money to that spouse to take care of that situation. Why? So that the household net worth is best protected. That's the overall story. And it literally is the reason that, I've made a lot of videos about how financial advice from financial advisors, from your stockbroker, they can create certain conflicts, unintended consequences. One of those is also simply going to your Medicare broker, who's only a Medicare broker, or your health insurance broker, who's only involved in the ACA. That also, the ripple effects are so strong, so possibly, consequential to your household net worth. You've got to consider them in junction. Anyway, because of that, Enrollment Central, go to the website, www.maximizeyourmedicare, find out more. Gets, some sympathy from me. It's hard to create original content. It's hard to come up with, kind of a reporting of facts and, responsibility, at the same time trying to draw readers' attention. Nevertheless, this article, see me after class. And here it is right here. Older investors are seen as patient. In market downturns, they're anything but. And this is, the link is here on the video for, in the text below the video. And basically what you see is here. 74-year-old client wanted to sell her stocks and moved out of most of her $620,000 portfolio. Blah, blah, blah. Let's continue on. But people at close to retirement often react more precipitously to market downturns, according to financial advisors and researchers. Okay. So, the rest of this article is going to be saying, well, and now here we go. Mr. Blanchett, I guess it's David Blanchett, co-author of a paper on a subject. Quote, in theory, when the market drops, you actually want to get more aggressive because markets are cheaper. Okay. So now this looks like a quote from a person from a, exalted place, and no one's questioning the quality of Morningstar or Mr. Blanchett. The fact of the matter was it hard to get his position? No question. Is this in theory correct? That is correct. I'm not disputing that. Why things like, PE ratios of the market is lower when the market is dropped. Fine. Got it. Okay. Now, the issue here, however, and then you see the negative, which is that if they sell after the market has gone down 10 or 20%, they end up taking a permanent loss. The implication here is they should never have sold. And this is the problem. is that what ends up happening is that these articles are written in a way to leave an implication here, right? It's not stating so. It's not stating so, but this can only be taken from my perspective as you shouldn't have sold. Not so fast, okay? Because what ends up happening is the central challenge to you is the fact that you've got this very limited article, very limited. It's a person, let's just take a look. This person has $620,000 and 74 years old. Okay. What don't we know about this person? We don't know this person's whether or not she has big bills. We don't know if she has a mortgage. We don't know what her health situation is. Okay. We don't know her domestic life, whether or not she has a spouse, whether or not she supports grandchildren. We don't know any of it. Nevertheless, plucked out of context is, oh yeah, well, you have a permanent loss. Okay, so you can see it right from the jump. What ends up happening is you're told something that, okay, here are the ramifications. Okay, guess what? Your situation may have demanded it. In which case, okay, all of these observations from here on, it's not pertinent to you. It's not pertinent to you. Let's take a perfect example. Guess what? I don't believe in socialism. Okay? Well, guess what? We've just handed out as a federal government $1,200 per person, basically to everyone in the United States. That looks like socialism to me. Guess what? You don't hear me complaining about it. Do you know why? Because these are extraordinary times, so far out of range of our central probabilities and scenarios that we would have thought, okay, when it's an emerging situation, you have emergency measures. We've had this emergency measure on multiple instances, right? Housing crisis, great financial crisis. No question about it. The United States, the Federal Reserve, bailed out the largest banks and brokerages. No matter what the big brokerages told Congress that they were hedged. Right? That's the subject of a whole other videos. Okay. Now, let's continue on. The urge of older investors to flee is understandable. Okay, so now we've got the issue. We don't get to the point of the article. Now, this is kind of criticizing the journalist and not really, and trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, right? I don't know this person, Neil Templin, right? I'm not under the conclusion this is some dumb person. No, absolutely not. But you can see what ends up happening, the pressure to create clicks and views, eyeballs. The pressure to create something that looks like attention grabbing. Even he has to then continue on, right? Even he has to continue on. And to his credit, in this sentence, the urge of older investors to flee tumultuous markets is understandable. He throws you a bone. He says, look, then only here, after drama, then says, oh yeah, by the way, this actually does depend on your personal situation. That younger workers won't touch their 401k for decades. Older Americans are already drawing them down. Oh yeah, by the way, one sentence he should have added here, and I'm going to put it there in your text. Lots of people at 60 years old got laid off due to the pandemic. Lots. And now all of a sudden, you've got something, and we're going to get to it here, right? Which is But once money is pulled from a depleted portfolio, it may not be there when the market rebounds. Researchers call this sequence risk. When markets crater just as retirees begin to spend savings, it's a scary situation, can result in a more meager retirement. Continuing on, investors shouldn't try to address sequence risk in the midst of a market crash. Guess what? And so you can hear me going back and forth. Good sentence, bad sentence, good sentence, bad sentence. This is an awful sentence. Under duress, you've got no choice. You've got no choice. So you have $10 million. All the bills are paid. Okay. Right? You could say that person should not be doing much. And in fact, that person probably had 20% of cash. They're buyer lower, right? Candidly, I tell very, very well off persons, you want lower. You want duress because the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater and you get to buy a quarter for 10 pennies. That's what you're waiting for. That's what you want if you're very, very wealthy. There's no coincidence, right? In emerging markets, go ahead and go click on Google emerging markets. What happens in third world countries when there's a huge problem? The rich, they get super rich. That person doesn't go broke. That person gets super, super rich. Why? Because they're able to buy a quarter for 10 pennies. Why? Because the other persons have to sell their holdings for food. So the idea that investors should not try to address sequence risk in the midst of a market crash, yeah, that sounds fine in theory for the person with $10 million. We've got a whole nother video, right? Because the reality is the person with $10 million, they were preparing for that day in advance. They don't get caught up, right? So they got there because they're sitting there reacting all the time. So investors should not try to address the sequence risk. Instead, they ought to plan for the next downturns and allocate less money to stocks if they are worried. Okay, so now back we go to decent sentence. Crazy sentence to sentence, good sentence, bad sentence, good sentence, bad sentence, good sentence. Here it is. The point here should be, look, if you were worried that much from the beginning, maybe your allocation was wrong from the beginning. And now we'll take a break, or I'm not going to take a break. I'm going to keep talking, but let's hope this works. So this is what sequence risk is. Okay? This is what sequence risk is. Someone starts at point A. Let's take a look at what actually sequence risk is. A closer look. Okay? Here it is right here. And you can see it. So, I stink at video, like I told you. We start off at point A. We start off at point A. At any point in time, you start at point A. The point of financial markets is we don't have a crystal ball, right? We don't have a crystal ball. We could go either up to B or down to C. Okay, and then from there, once you are at point A, you continue on with the same process, which means you could go gone from B to D or from B to E. Okay? Now, the issue is the following. And the reason this article gets my criticism is, number one, once you're at B, no, let's say you've gone down to C. There was no guarantee you were going up to F. Anyone who tells you that for sure you are going up to F, that is an untruth. Because if you are that certain you're going from C to F, I tell you what you do. You go to the bank, you borrow as much as possible, and you buy the riskiest securities possible to go from C to F. And the amount that you will make from C to F, if you're that certain, will exceed A by a lot. So don't come to me and tell me I knew for certainty that we were going from C to F. That is just not correct. No scientist would tell you this. You know, there's a world. The reason that Wall Street is run, program trading, people know about program trading, right? So the fact is, there's a reason this stuff is run by physicists, right? Physics majors, math majors, they run program trading. Why? Guess who's expert at this? This is exactly the way that stuff moves through space. This is how particles move, people. And oh yeah, by the way, if you keep drawing this out and out, you keep drawing this tree, what do you get? You get the bell curve. Yeah. So now you can understand why I don't like this article. Right? You can understand why I don't like this article. And the reason is let's say we'll stop here. Now I'm going to go back to the article and let's just take a look at it, because the issue here is the problem with the thing about sequence risk is you have many sequence risks, many, right? Because the one thing, and let's just say, look what happened. Okay, look what happened. Fired. Flood. Look what happened in here. What happens at point G if you were laid off? Right? You're Midland, Michigan. Point G, 100-year flood. The idea, okay, well, just hang in there. Just hang in there because, you know, your losses are going to be permanent. Right? So let's just say, for example, this happened at point C. And you didn't do something. You didn't. Guess what's going to happen? Now you could have gone to point G and then this stuff occurred. So the idea that you read this article and just go, oh, well, I read this article in Barron's and it said, just hang on because you're making your loss permanent. And therefore, what you've got is, you know, sequence risk. And in theory, that was wrong. Guess what? There's a disconnect between theory and the real world, your real world situation. Yeah. This can, because of this, just look over here. And fired, I didn't say fired because of the fact that you've done something wrong. Right? We've got systematic unemployment, systematic greater than 10% unemployment in our nation right now. Right? And it's not discriminating between blue collar, white collar. In fact, I could actually even tell you that for white collar, it's going to be more difficult. It's going to be harder to get rehired if you are a person making $100,000 a year and you were let go due to structural change at your company. For you to be able to find the replacement job at anything close to your income and responsibilities, yeah, I'm going to be skeptical. My point here is when this combination shows up, there's no hedge for that. You can't hedge this, right? For example, let's go back here. And let's just say, for example, let's just say you're on A, right? And you can see me going backwards because I'm having to look at the camera. Let's say you're A, and A was entirely just Apple stock. Just like everything was an Apple stock. Can I hedge this sequence risk? In other words, can I protect myself? It goes from A to C. You bet I can. You betcha I can. You know what? We've got entire markets to hedge that. If Apple stock declines, can I find an instrument that goes higher in value so that I don't lose money? Yeah. They're called options. A put option will do it. You can protect your holding in Apple stock. What you cannot do is you can't hedge G, where you go down to G and this combination of stuff. Now, the point where the article is okay is the rest of the article has a couple of other statements, and I'm going to show them to you. They're showing you up on the screen now, which is there are admittances. Admittance is not a word. There are financial advisors who tell you, look, and this is the part that's correct. It's glossed over in the article, but these are the things that you can take away, which is, look, if you can't handle G, you've got to think about how much you're investing at A in risky stuff. That one is right. Right? In other words, pandemic has created different scenarios here. It's created different scenarios. The housing crisis created different scenarios here. What you thought was the possible sequences, scenarios, changed. When it changed, your personal circumstance may have dictated to you that you make adjustments. To blanket statement, use some theoretical answer from Morningstar saying, okay, well, this in theory created, your risk, which is sequence risk. Guess what? Life may have dictated this to you. So the idea that you just read this article and say, okay, the market's down 15% or the market's up 15%, and now what ends up happening here is, yeah, you know what they did? They continued on because at each point in time, yeah, it went back up to F, right? Which is basically what has happened now, right? S&P just very, very slightly negative for the year from the all-time high. Okay. You've presumed that you were going to end up at F. You've presumed you're going to end up at F. That's Monday morning quarterbacking. And I tell persons that are financial planning clients, look, you can't Monday morning quarterback. Cannot. Because if you get it wrong, for some reason you don't control, you're here at G, and then this happens. This outcome can be so catastrophic, you can't get back up. Minus 10, minus 15, 20%, as stated in this article. That's not going to be anything minus 60%. You don't think this happened? This happened here, right? Go ahead. Sanford Lake, Michigan. Go ahead, take a picture or go in Google. Where what ends up happening is the combination of these. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying go to sleep and worry about a 100-year flood. No. But fired, however, unemployment, That's not a once in 100-year thing. And now you've got 10% unemployment in the United States. So as a result, this is someone. Now, you also notice one last thing here on this article, right? This is a person with hundreds of thousands of dollars, 74-year-old. Okay, guess what? In certain locations, there's no way to outspend this money. Right? You can't go to the movies. Candidly, you can't get on a cruise. Right? In other words, that may have been the outcome required. For other persons at lower balances, let's call it $100,000. Guess what? Maybe they have no choice but to accept this risk. That's okay too. My point here is when you read these articles, when you see this advice, don't take it as blanket advice. This is the problem that you have when you see these articles. That's why this article, ultimately still on balance, which makes it look like this is the lesson that you should learn, isn't really the right lesson at all. And for that, you get see me after class.